Welcome to the Tech Cat Show with host Lori H. Schwartz. Each week we hear from established leaders in the technology and consumer industry. Finding out the scoop should never be this much fun. Now, here is your host, Lori H. Schwartz.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Tech Cat Show. We're actually trying a new platform today, and so you all get to witness it. We're broadcasting live on YouTube, on Facebook, and out on Voice America. And I can't think of a better way to test an emerging platform than to have on some guests in a company that is doing such great cutting edge work in virtual reality and in immersive entertainment. So I want to bring on my guests right now, and that is the fabulous Kim Adams and Max Planck, who are the co-founders of Adventure Lab. And up on the screen, you're also seeing Voice America Business. We're going out on their podcast network, so that's what you're seeing up there. But let's first have Max and Kim introduce themselves, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Lori. Thanks for having us.
So why don't we start, Max, why don't you do a little intro, and then Kim, I know you guys met in a fun way and you're co-founders of Adventure Lab, and I got to do Adventure Lab last week and I'm still thinking about it. It was so much fun, and it's this like wild combination. I felt like I was in a location-based experience, but I wasn't. I was in my little gym. So it's a virtual reality game, but it's also an escape room, and it's just so many different things. But let's step back and have you guys introduce yourselves and give us a little sense of your world. And meanwhile, I'll be playing around with some of the different resolutions here in StreamYard. so go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, prototyping.
It was really fun to watch. I know you were playing it with Kim last week. It was fun to watch you guys in there. This idea for a live hosted adventure platform came to me while we were working at Oculus Story Studio. And so let me back up a little bit. Kim and I both come from the visual effects, computer animation world. I worked at Pixar for 10 years, and Kim worked there for 6 years. She can speak to how much of a badass she is. And stuff there. Unfortunately, we didn't actually get to work together at Pixar. I was in the feature division while she was building a whole new division at Pixar. And so our heart is in making content and making experiences that friends and family can love. I left Pixar in 2014 because I was looking for that next leap forward in entertainment. I would hear stories of the early days at Pixar back in the 1980s. And I wished for that. I was lucky enough to be there during the golden days of Pixar. And so I was like, what is that for our generation? What is that hard problem that is using technology to create something magical? And that's why I fell in love with virtual reality. And the first idea we had was, what if we could put our audience into an experience like what we were making at Pixar? Let's create a story, a narrative that we put our audience into and make them feel immersed. And that's where I started Oculus Story Studio with Edward Sachi and Sascha Unseld. It was during my time there, I should say that's where Kim and I actually started meeting together. About a year and a half into Story Studio, we realized that we needed a grown-up to come in and help us to know how to scale a team. And that's where Kim came in and just saved our butt. And we developed a really strong relationship there. It was also during that time that I was beginning to think, I love what we're doing. I love that we're kind of this lighthouse effect for what a narrative could look like. But I was realizing that VR is better when you do it with others and when there's something to do, when you're the hero. And so at the same time, I got really into escape rooms. We were studying Immersive Theater at the time. And I'm a big Dungeons and Dragons nerd. I love role-playing games. I've been dungeon mastering a game now for a group of my friends who were with us at Story Studio. And I was realizing, I was like, there needs to be something where we all come together and have this adventure. And I think it would be most magical if there was something like that Clue Master in an escape room or a Dungeon Master in Dungeons and Dragons. And so that was the seed of this idea.
And Kim, tell us your story.
Yeah, so I come from entertainment as well. As Max said, I was a visual effects producer in LA for a while before I moved up and worked at Pixar, where I was a producer for 5 years of short form content. So I helped to create a new division there for short films that focused on ancillary content, so specifically Toy Story and Cars. So produced 13 short films there and helped to develop a couple of TV specials, worked with 8 new directors, helped start Pixar Canada, and was working with both of those teams, about 100 and up to 130 folks or so across those 2 countries. And it was amazing. And but coming from traditional VFX pipeline, animation pipeline, those are, tried and true workflows and pipelines. We know kind of what levers to pull, how to plan for them. It's always interesting with the new creative content, but I became really intrigued by what Google Spotlight Stories was doing at the time, which was branching storylines in VR, bringing in traditional directors and saying, like, what would you do if the viewer could look wherever and the viewer could be inside the story? What would you do? And that to me was so mind-blowing. And Glenn Keane at that point was finishing up the short film called Duet, which was just made me completely fall in love and say, okay, I have to keep pulling that thread and see where this is going to lead. Because as much as I've always loved working with artists, that's my passion, I realized that I loved working with brilliant engineers just as much. And to be involved in a dialogue between those 2 teams, inspiring each other and cracking problems and coming up with stuff that nobody's ever seen before is really exciting. So after a couple of years at Spotlight Stories, I went over to Oculus Story Studios, Max said, joined up with them as the head of production there and executive producer, worked on projects like Wolves in the Walls, which was awesome. And when that studio closed, I went over to Facebook and helped to create a creative tech team on Portal, developing a new way to tell stories in AR. So that was really fun also. But at that point, Max and I started, sorry for the dog barking. Max and I started brainstorming, going to lunch and saying, okay, when's the right time to get back into VR? And we're also really watching the market at that point and noticing the trend. And there was, sorry, 2 dogs now. Okay, we're going to be done. Sorry.
No worries.
Watching the trend of, immersive theaters, escape rooms, noticing that next gen is very much the experience generation and everyone's wanting to do things together in the most immersive way possible. And so looking at that and also the trend, YouTube influencers, TikTok influencers, how they're having this new platform with followers and like all of these things merging together with what we knew about, or what we felt was going to be a game changer with the Oculus Quest coming out, and realizing like all these things were converging and making it the right time for this really wacky idea that Max had about live hosted VR adventures and an event-based system that no one had ever done before. So that really intrigued me.
It took you a little bit to win you over.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, it took a while. We had a lot of conversations, which we still do, about what's going to work and what's not. And, we think that what we have here is pretty fun. And it was really fun playing with you the other day.
Yeah, I was because I'm a former improviser, I was torturing your actor host because I couldn't help myself. But this is what I loved about it. So right now we've been all sheltered at home for the last 3 or 4 months, and a lot of our colleagues who worked in location-based services, where you go like The Void or Dreamscape, and you go and you have this fantastic experience where they physically build out a set, you put on a VR headset, and you have this great experience. And I've taken my 10-year-old a few times and she absolutely loves it. And that space was set to explode. And then Corona hits, and all of those places are on pause right now, hoping they are able to survive and come out of it. But you have all these great things that are happening in that space where you submerge yourself physically and visually in this new world. So I was so blown away by how your experience, and I kept telling this to Kim, because that day, for whatever the reason, my Wi-Fi was having issues. So I have the Oculus headset on and I'm in my little gym, and I kept being pulled back out into my gym. from your world, because my Wi-Fi was crapping out on me, which it never does, but just on that day it did. But what was so interesting was I really thought I had shown up at this cool space and had entered this environment and was talking to this wacky robot, and we'll get into the story in a moment, but and then I would get sucked into being back at the gym, and I would be like, what is going on? And I have to tell you, it was an extraordinary moment for me because I realized what you've accomplished, right? Like
Great.
you have taken us in our sheltered at home environment, and you have given us the best worlds of location-based experiences with never leaving our house. Because I mean, and there's some moments where I stepped out of my safety circle, because I was in a smaller Guardian through Oculus Quest, because I didn't have a lot of space. But next time I do it, I definitely will give myself a bigger Guardian. And the Guardian, of course, for those of you that don't know, when you put on a VR headset, the system lets you set a protective wall so you don't bang into things. And you set that wall. So I had a small wall. So I kept falling out of it just because of my own whatever. But I just thought it was absolutely fascinating what an immersive world you created. And Adventure Lab being a perfect name for it. So your first adventure for Adventure Lab is called Dr. Crumb's School for Disobedient Pets. So
Nailed
when I read it. So when I showed up, I was a bunny. I was a kitty cat. I chose kitty cat as my character, and so I was kitty cat, and I could see myself. And I could move my arms. I don't have any sensors on my feet, so my feet weren't reacting, but I could move my arms and see what my arms were doing. And I'm just going to cut to just an image of this environment there, which was a mind blow. And you enter this world, and it's like a chamber. And I'll just move around for a second. These are what the characters look like. So I was actually the purple cat in our adventure. And Kim, you were the pink bunny rabbit, right?
Yeah, I think it was the bunny.
You were the bunny, and then you move around, you enter and you get teleported, like by stepping on a device. So nothing feels like also just showing up. The narrative actually has you step onto this thing and get transported, and you feel all of those experiences. So there's nothing like really awkward about it. And there's a sort of shot of one of the heat. The freezing robot, the robot that freezes you. But anyway, these are just some examples of the shots. But tell us about the idea for this first world, because the goal of this adventure was for Kim and I to get through these different things to get out, basically, and we were being chased by sort of an evil robot. So it was totally fascinating. And it was an actor, so he was responding to us, which was so great because it wasn't a bot, and there was a couple of different actors in it that were engaging with it. It was so much fun. So tell us about how you came up with the idea for your first story.
Yeah, I'll just do something quick, and Kim, you can talk about how we worked with the writer to get there. The first inspiration for what we were doing was to take what escape rooms are doing, this idea that you have a certain amount of time to get through puzzles, and it's a cooperative adventure. So you and your friends are working together to beat the clock. And so we wanted this host, the performer, to play both the role of your clue master, someone who's helping you. And so that is Chief, who is a member of the VIA, the Virtual Investigations Agency. And he's the one who gives you your mission briefing, tells you what you're doing. And while you're in the adventure, you can ask Chief for clues. And we also wanted to explore what would it be like if the performer was kind of like the dungeon master. And so that's where the host plays both Chief and Dr. Crumb. And Dr. Crumb is there for character building moments and antagonism and a little bit of sarcasm. And so we knew we wanted a story that could play both of those roles.
Yeah, I loved that, and I loved Kim and I were interacting, so that was really fun. So I totally see this as something really fun that you can do with friends, where we each play one of those characters, and I can just go back to a shot of the characters, where we each play one of these characters, and we were like having a ball, just interacting with each other. So, and each of us could hear each other too. So you're in this world, you're hearing each other, and then the character, of course, that you created is sorry, I'm playing around with the screens here, and you can interact. So I guess I have a lot of questions. Did you start with the script first, but at the same time you're aware of what the technology can do? But
Yeah,
how did you begin this?
Yeah, it's sort of like, where do you begin, right? For me, you always begin with story. So we hired an incredible interactive writer, Kurt Fry, who actually has a history of working with theme parks. So we're like, this is a very guest-oriented, interactive experience. He's written a bunch of narrative experiences that work in that environment. So he was fantastic and helped us really dig into this idea of Dr. Crumb and his world and who are you in the world. And but after a while, we got to a certain point and realized that we didn't know where we were with the tech. We didn't know what the interactions and the games were going to be. Initially, we were much more game-oriented, where it was going to be little mini games that you could do and replay over and over again. And we realized that that's not as interesting to us as this escape room idea, where it's more cooperative and more talking. And we really wanted to, through the process of developing and prototyping and testing over and over and over, and we have amazing friends and family and colleagues that have tested for us, telling us what feels intuitive and easy to do mechanics wise, which Max and the engineers really refined, as well as like what's engaging. How much is too much story, right? Because you're in there, as Max said, you want to do something. You have your hands, you're ready to go. So we knew that too much story, like people, they just don't, it doesn't register unless you onboard in a specific, very thoughtful way. And then you got to let people play. In fact, sometimes when the host comes in too much and is talking to you too much, if you're puzzle solving against a clock with your friends, you're like, why are you talking to me? Like, leave us alone, we're working here. You know? So it's really about finding what is the right balance there. And so is very much a back and forth, like I was talking about before, with artists inspiring tech and tech inspiring artists. And once it really clicked for us, like, oh, okay, we need to move away from the mini games and really dive further into the escape rooms and immersive theater. That's when we also pulled in Janine Willett from Third Rail Project. She's one of the co-founders of Third Rail. And she flew up from New York. We had Alethea Avramis there at the brainstorm. We had this team of really creative folks, and sort of like, where do we go next? We had this really interesting demo, but it wasn't quite there yet. So, and that's when we really locked it down. And at the end of the day, I was like, this is an amazing plan. How do we execute this? And Janine said, I'll write it. So she went home and she wrote it, and, you know, we workshopped it back and forth, working, you know, with the engineers, just sort of like, is this possible? Is that possible? And we locked in on this particular script for the first episode. And actually, Janine's already written the second episode. So we'll go even deeper into Dr. Crumb's world. There's so much more to learn about him and his evil plan and why he's so demented.
Well, and I really enjoyed the interaction with him too. And you're right. I think you guys have a really good formula of like how much you just get to be entertained by this character and sort of absorbing that you're in this full world. And there's this like floating robot-y thing, and he's really funny. You know, he's sarcastic and funny and, you know, stereotypically evil, but like fun. And so you're inside of this adventure that you're used to watching in TV. So, and then you're forced to act too. So it was this nice combination of, I got to be a viewer, and then I also got to engage too. But and I loved messing with him, like talking to him and having him respond. So how do you figure out the actors for this? Like, how do you know how much is going to be actor and how much is just going to be the scene? Like, how do you find that balance?
Yeah, well, we were lucky enough to meet Jasper Patterson early on in our development process, and he had founded a VR studio and is an immersive theater actor, specifically having a deep history in VR. So he was like the perfect immersive performer for us to test this with. And so from the beginning, he would be running demos for us, giving us suggestions, telling us from the performer's point of view what felt right and what felt stiff and what was needed tools-wise. And throughout that process, we were able to, and then when Janine came in, we were able to lock into a script. So now we have a script, and some of that's based on stuff that just happened through Jasper's improv in the room, or another, Max also used to do demos. If Max did a demo and somebody said something funny that worked, like the evil laugh thing that we won't talk too much about, but is one of the most fun moments that came out of an improv that Jasper did. So the performer does get a script, They don't have to stick to everything in the script. There are some things bolded in the script that are required in order for the guests to know, what is this world? Who am I in this world? What's expected of me? And what timeframes, right? We have to set you up for a certain amount of success by making sure that you're listening in that mission briefing to what's happening. Very similar to how they onboard and something like The Void, right? You get a video though. Here we have a live performer telling you and showing you images, like here's the deal, right?
Right.
And then setting you up. And so, and then after that, they really are encouraged to improv. And we have 3 hosts right now that are trained up, and they all have their own sort of take and personalities on things, different kinds of accents that they do. So they all play with it. And that's really the idea, is that we're building not just the content, but we're building a platform for performers. So a new marketplace, like a virtual marketplace for a new performance gig economy.
I know. That's the other thing that I love too, because I have a history of improv, which some people do hold against me. But I have a history of improv, and so I have all these improv actor friends, and I was sitting there going, "Oh my God, this is like a whole new world of content and content opportunities." I mean, it just really blew me away how you've combined all of these trends. So give us a sense of now the business model behind this. You have it rock and rolling. I know you can log on similar to Dreamscape and The Void, where you go on and you see the schedule, and then you can do it. Oh, Max went away for a second.
I think maybe he's bringing back the business model. I don't know.
Okay. But you have a schedule that you can sign up for, and I think you're charging fees now for that. So give us a sense of like what the model for this is, because I definitely want to take my daughter, because she absolutely loves Dreamscape.
Oh,
and
we love kids in it. Kids just get it immediately, and it's actually one of my favorite moments is watching Kim's daughter Abby do the experience. She was play testing it, and she began to talk with the host, actually giving him instruction of like, hey, could you remember this thing for me and tell him it later? Or, hey, could you help over here? Just to hop in, and they start role playing naturally. And so
of course, my daughter was delegating, right?
Yes, okay.
Right. I love that. I know my kid would just love this. And considering that, like, if you get an Oculus Quest, which pre-COVID was like 500. Now they're a little harder to find because we all got so caught off guard by this. But it's not that much of an investment for continuous, entertainment in that way. And then jumping on, and eventually you're going to have multiple adventures running, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So how are you marketing this? What's the plan for really rolling this out big?
Yeah. The idea is that we think that this idea of live hosted adventure is magical. We're already seeing that just having someone in this world that's fantastic, that you can only be in VR. There's something powerful about this. And we think that we can make many different types of adventures where a host could play a role. And so we're starting with something that's very much inspired with escape rooms. We have ideas about adventures where it's about exploration, where it's about adventure in all the different forms, game shows, possibly tourism. And so what we want to do is prove that this is something that people love, do all the hard work to actually build the technology to broker relationships between hosts and our guests, and build a destination with lots of different adventure options. And so we become this digital space where people spend their time, and that spend their time enough that they're like, hey, this is every month I get together with my friends and family to do a new adventure. And maybe it's with different hosts, or maybe it's with our favorite host because we love him or her. And so that's important for us, is that the hosts are a big part of the platform. We want them to get comfortable, native, and actually get really good at it so that people follow them, that they become super hosts.
Oh, wow. So that they develop a fan base as well. It's so interesting, just a non sequitur, but I've been doing Supernatural on Quest VR, which is exercise with the fitness people actually, coaching you. And one of the coaches, I've started just always picking his workouts, because I just love doing it with him. So I've started like tweeting about him, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm a fan of a fitness trainer on a VR fitness app.
this is
Welcome to the future.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's pre-recorded, right? It's a beautiful presentation,
Yes.
a pre-recorded workout.
Yeah.
And for us, we think that there's enough value. It's almost like there's an accountability of if there's actually another person in the world with me at the same time and giving encouragement, that it creates this opportunity. And there's a feeling of like, this is mine. This is my unique experience. It's personalized to me. And that's the cool thing we're finding is people are saying, I've had VR for 3 years now, and I've got a group of friends that all bought the Quest, and we've been planning to do something social where we hop into Altspace or VR chat or Rec Room, and it just never came together. They're busy people, and they just never found the time. But to say, hey guys, I signed up for this adventure that's at this particular time, and when we show up, there's going to be someone there to make sure we have a good time. It's going to host us. That's what's really exciting for us. And suddenly these groups are coming together because that opportunity for playing and being guided creates that excuse. It's like, hey guys, we're doing this. And as you said, I think that's what makes it feel like location based. Because whenever you go to the Void or Sandbox VR or Dreamscape, you have to plan and go and put it on your calendar.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's we are going to go do this thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's not as casual as just going, I think I'll go into VR chat right now or whatever. And I think I told you, Kim, that just going back to these characters, like what I loved about this too was when I have tried, and I'm a little lame on this, but when I try and go into Altspace or VR chat or any of these, and you're sort of this weird avatar, and then you could design your own avatar, and I never quite know who I am or how weird I look. I'm not connected physically to this avatar that I'm being in those apps. And this, I just was like, I understood because you let me see my character right away. And you also let me see that I'm in control of the character. And also they're normal looking for animated furry creatures. so that I didn't feel disconnected. Like I actually felt like I was in this character, and it wasn't weird. It matched the situation. I wasn't aware of being in a weird VR chat situation. It all and I wasn't floating above the floor or sitting in a chair that I was lower than. There weren't any of those modalities that we're still a little challenged with in a lot of these social apps in VR. This was just really clean. The experience is really clean. I mean, I'm not an investor or anything. Kim and I know each other a long time, so I'm not sharing my love of this. I'm just telling you, as a strategist and someone that's looking at technology trends, you have a blend of a lot of trends happening in this at once that are all sort of hot right now, right?
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Well, all those mechanics and ease of use like that is all Max. Making sure that things feel intuitive. We want you to feel comfortable. We never want someone to be worried about, am I doing it wrong? Or awkward, because we need to make sure that guests are comfortable from the moment they come in. It needs to be a very friendly welcome by the host. You need to be onboarded in a fun way, encouraging way. We want everyone to have a good experience. And yeah, some of the other social platforms and VR can be a little bit, I think in particular for women, can get a little bit toxic. So I think the hosted nature of this also makes it feel great, especially we've had women say like, wow, I've never felt so safe in VR before. And again, women also saying like, I totally forgot where I was, which to me is saying the same thing. Like you feel safe enough where you can forget where you are, because it feels good and fun. And even though the host is interacting with you, it never feels sketchy at all. It's just all fun.
I did want to say that, Kim, you did help a lot. It wasn't just the me with the engineers. It was very important from the beginning that we were making something that was intuitive for you and for everyone. I'm a big nerd. I'm a VR nerd, and
right.
So, I'm going to make something that is like, oh, I get to use all the buttons and all these cool gadgets. Then it's going to be super intimidating and hard to.
Right. I'm like the other side of the scale where I'm like, I don't get it. It needs to be easy enough for me to use. So we're kind of like, everything in between that range is covered.
Well,
right. Yeah. I love it. Well, I was going to say, do you guys see new roles being born because of this platform? So we're starting to see, I'm doing a lot of work in virtual events right now. So I see new virtual event roles happening. And even
Yeah.
as we move into hybrid, where you'll have virtual event manager or whatever, things that were never conceived before. So this is a new, platform, basically. Do you see new roles coming out of this? Like, and people have to, like you, Kim and Max, you have a language, but this is really tech and story coming together in such a fantastic way. So what kind of new roles and skills do you see people needing to jump in here?
Yeah, it's a really interesting mashup. I mean, also the immersive theater aspect of it, like we have a traditional writer. We also have an immersive theater director and writer, engineers. We have different tech roles, right? There's roles for tech folks to sort of oversee the guest. It's very, we're looking for a couple of folks right now, and it's interesting because I didn't realize how focused I would be on customer service experience. But this is all about making sure people have a safe, wonderful, delightful time. Even if they don't solve all the puzzles, we want them to leave feeling like, wow, that was really worth the money I spent and really a fun thing, and I want to do it again. So our whole team is really customer service focused, guest focused.
That's interesting because your engineer that you connected me with, just in case I was having problems, I thought it was really polite.
Chris is great.
And I thought, well, he doesn't feel engineering to me when he was talking to me, because he was like, he had good social skills it was just a small exchange, but that's an interesting point because you're dealing with customers. They're buying tickets, they're entering a world, they need to feel comfortable. And you're absolutely right. I didn't feel weird at all in your experience, and I have in some of those social VR worlds. But also, I'm always going to know who's in my group with me, or do you envision different people will mix together in this? Like, is it always going to be people that know each other, or are you mixing people that don't know each other right now?
Right now, the experience is its best when people know each other. The way you sign up for a showtime is that you're the team leader. You say, I would love to gather a group at this particular time, and you buy that slot, and then you assemble your team. We're finding that people coming together across distance, it warms our heart when I think, was it last week, Kim, where we had 2 people in Australia playing with 2 people in New York or San Francisco?
Yeah, they're friends that I hadn't seen in so long. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so great. This could be like a birthday party or things like that. Totally. And how long? I don't even remember. It was like 45-minute experience, the whole thing.
It's about 40 minutes. Yeah, it depends how long we take an onboarding, and hopefully everyone joins at the right time, right? But never more than 45, 50 minutes on the long end, because the puzzles are timed, right? You have a certain amount of time to get through each challenge.
And have you felt, I mean, it's early yet, but is that the right amount of time that people can handle? Like, did you play with how long can this be before I want to do it or don't want to do it or whatever that is?
We at first we had something that was on a little bit over an hour. Had a little bit more puzzle solving, and the puzzles were difficult. And we realized that at about an hour, some people, especially new to VR, are exhausted by it.
Yeah.
And so 40 minutes, that we also just want to make it work for our business model. If we make an experience that's 2 hours long, we're going to have to charge a certain amount to justify that cost for the performer. So we knew that we were aiming for about an hour long. Again, we were inspired by escape rooms. But we found, actually, to make it short and sweet, instead of having puzzles that feel a little longer, that 40 minutes felt like people were like, that was satisfying. It felt like an hour, but I'm not as exhausted. And it works well because it gives time for the performers to warm up, a little bit of time to rest in between shows. And so that's where we're at right now. We continue to learn. Our customers tell us, like, hey, I'd like it to be more like an hour, but they tend to be a little bit more VR experienced or are more escape room enthusiasts. So we're figuring it out, but right now our customers are saying 40 minutes is a sweet spot.
You really do have to juggle a lot of things here because you're dealing with live talent. So you're also adding that. Now, what about, there is still the challenge of distribution of headsets for VR. So do you envision that you will also become a location-based experience as well, where people can come and just get the headset and do the experience, or are you always going to stay this model? Because we're still not at, massive distribution. We're getting there, but there still is that, do I have a VR headset?
Yes.
That kind of thing. So what's your thinking on that piece?
Right now, there's about 10 to 15 million headsets out there. And so that's not big enough for where we think this idea can really be as powerful as we want it to be. We do think that VR headsets are growing, and by 2023, there's going to be a lot of headsets out there. We had it on a roadmap to say we'd love to be in location-based as well as the home. And we made a decision earlier this year, especially timed around when the pandemic started, that we were just going to focus on the home. That we think that finding a way to have people come together when they can't actually physically be together is the real problem we want to solve. If anything, as the number of headsets grow out there, we're getting feedback from our customers that they're saying, I would love to do this, but I'm the only one I know who has VR. And I have a bunch of friends who I can think of who would love to do this. And so we want them to eventually buy VR, but it might take time and a few generations of the hardware to get there. So what we're thinking about is, how are there ways where that person could play in VR with a host who's in VR, but the other friends could participate in another way, possibly through a 2D screen, so that they could watch the game and participate in the game in a different way. Not fully immersed as the person who has VR, but there's at least a way that connection can happen.
Well, that's a great point. So are you recording each experience? I mean, is that something that eventually you'll say, okay, and here's your adventure, $25, whatever. Like, instead of the picture of me getting wet by the roller coaster, am I going to get this 45-minute experience as a YouTube video or something? I mean, is that part of, what you're talking about?
Right now, you don't get the whole experience, but you get a highlights reel. So the reel that we watched in the experience at the end. You hopefully got that email, which is before you even have your headset off, you have an email with your highlights video. And we're also going to have the ability to do selfies with Dr. Crumb in there, which will be fun.
That's awesome. And do you, I mean, I just thought of this, I'm sure you've already talked about this, but do you see giving this as a templated experience that other storytellers and VR creators can just basically plug and play? Like,
yeah,
you
that's
have
the
built
idea.
a platform. Okay.
Right. So
Eventually you'll hand this off.
Sorry. Yeah. Part of what we're doing, how there's a formula for writing a script. It certainly doesn't guarantee that you're going to write a compelling script, but at least we know, like, oh, the 10-minute incident happens, and at the end of the second act, this all has to be lost. And like all of these things that have worked over the years, like, what is that for this new kind of medium? So part of what we're putting together is this blueprint story adventure graph, we're calling it, like, that includes things like onboarding and offboarding and getting comfortable with the tools, and then it even has a part in the graph where how do we want people to feel throughout the experience, and are we delivering on that? So something for other developers to map against, other studios potentially. So yeah, pretty quickly we're going to start partnering with developers and then eventually with studios to get more content on the platform. I mean, ultimately you'd be able to go on and see 100, 200, 300 different adventures with different hosts and say, oh, that host is doing this one. I love that host. Let's all do that, and sign up for different show times.
Well, so you're really going to develop an army of talent out there.
There is an army. We've done almost no recruiting right now, and I have a list of 40 really talented folks waiting to chat with us who are really interested in performing. So there are a lot of performers out there. I mean, and we want it to be, it's fairly easy to learn, and we want it to be accessible for everybody. The funny guy in your dorm room that that instead of game night every Friday night wants to host that. Or all the way up to celebrities. You can see a Jack Black.
Oh my God, yeah.
Hosted, and everybody in between, YouTubers, TikTok influencers. We'll definitely bring on some celebrity hosts as well along the way. But there's a real wide range of folks out there who are really talented.
And do you see this also having a sort of, I'm just thinking about a corporate retreat? and we all jump in. How many people can be in your world right now?
For this first adventure, we have up to 4 players. Four of our guests can hop in. As we build out more and more adventures, we do want to have the ability to have 10, 12, possibly 20, 40 guests at a time with a host. We don't want to grow too big. I think if we grow into the hundreds, we don't want to become the HQ trivia. We want to have a type of experience where people feel like there's an intimacy with the host. And I think once you hit to about 40, that's maybe an adventure that will be more like a game show experience or an exploration where a bunch of teams start at a place and then split up. But beyond that, if we're going to make 100-person adventures, we're going to have multiple hosts. And so that will be a special kind of thing. We like right now that one host runs our adventure, but takes on many different roles. And so one host is driving Dr. Crumb and Chief, and we use voice modulation as well as we have some talented hosts who can do some voice work. And so it feels like they're different characters. We love it when people hop out and be like, were there 3 people hosting this?
Right. It did feel like that. I was actually surprised that it was the same actor. So
and there's actually one other character that is a secret that people can find that I don't think you found that character, but if you go back again, you'll see we're playing around with the idea of an immersive theater thing that they do called one-on-ones, where you're swept into a room just one-on-one with a character. And in this case, the character actually reveals a clue to you that you can take back to help your team.
Wow. And you've mentioned immersive theater, and we've talked about this a lot on various shows, that immersive theater is definitely an underbelly to VR, that directors who can work in that kind of theater do really well in VR. And that was sort of critical for you guys, right? To have that sort of thinking in this environment.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that we actually learned at Story Studio when we were on Wolves in the Walls, and we sort of hit a wall at one point. And I think it was Sashka who had a relationship with Third Rail and said, I have an idea I think would be helpful. And we started talking to Janine, Zach, and Tom, and they just completely got it, and they completely helped reinvent the narrative. And then they actually helped in the writing of the final script, at least for the first episode, and I know they helped with the other episodes as well. So it was a turning point for us. So it was natural for us to think about Janine when we knew we were going to turn back in this direction.
And just for everyone, tell us who Third Rail is. And Wolves in the Wall, by the way, if you haven't seen it or heard about it, won an Emmy last year for immersive media, and I was happy to be involved in that, not in this show. And not in determining the Emmy, because it was a jury, but just in being the governor that got to give it to you guys. But it was such an amazing VR experience, and also had that very theatrical vibe to it, where you're interacting with an AI character, but really robust. Yeah. So tell us about Third Rail, because I think that's a really interesting piece in this puzzle.
Yeah, Third Rail Projects has been doing immersive theater for a number of years, I think maybe even 12 years. There's 3 co-founders, and they have been running one experience called Then She Fell, which is loosely based around the story of Alice in Wonderland, of the real Alice and Lewis Carroll. And it's an incredible experience where there's only, I think, 12 audience members. And you come on, and it's you go through a series of rooms, and the actors, unlike Sleep No More, the actors speak directly to you and ask you to do different things. And it's just, it was mind-blowing for me. Really changed the way I thought about story and what's possible. And yeah, it's super, super valuable when you're exploring a VR immersive space.
So what's next? What should people be looking out for? So many people don't know about you guys. So where can they learn more about you and what you're doing and all that kind of thing?
They can go to our website. It's adventurelab.fun, and you can book a show. Right now we're offering a launch special, 50% off your experience for you and your friends, up to 3 of your friends to join you, and check it out. It's different, it's fun, and it's something that thankfully it just really delivers on our mission, which has always been to connect people through play across distance. And turns out that we ended up needing that way more than we thought we were going to need that in the beginning. So we're delighted when we get to see people play and have fun and see each other in the virtual space and even hug each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
VR
that's funny. You and I bumped a couple of
right.
times. And Max and Kim, just on what's happening in our world now, when we are allowed to be around each other again, will that impact what you're doing at all? I mean, besides you guys being able to work more closely and your teams being in the same place together, is that going to change the nature of this experience?
We've been working on this since early 2019. Just as Kim was saying, we saw this trend that especially Gen Z and young millennials are all hanging out digitally. It's just, instead of on a Tuesday night going into the city, we want to give people this option that they can hang out virtually. So we saw this trend and we saw a need. All of my friends right now are having kids, and so I see them a lot less. They have to arrange a babysitter. It's a lot of logistics to actually go out. But this idea of, wait a minute, we can do this thing that I just need to go into my bedroom or into my gym, and there's a feeling that I got to hang out with my friends for an hour. I think that's something we need in a pandemic or not. I think what the pandemic has done is it's taught us that we can hang out virtually, and that there is some value in that. I would hope that when we can get back together, people go to bars, people go to concerts, people go out and hang out together. But we think we're offering something for, instead of just being alone on a Tuesday night, just browsing the web, you could do this, and it's a feeling of hanging out. And so we want to create more opportunities to connect.
And we're also really clear that we don't actually want to create a metaverse where you spend hours and hours of your time in. We want to create special moments between you and your friends and family. So special shared experiences. And those have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And then we want you to go back to real life. We're not competing with real life at all.
Oh, please compete with real life.
Maybe now it might be a good thing. Yeah.
Is there any, just as a last question or two, and then I want you to give us all your social media stuff, but is there any new tech coming out that you're most excited about for your experiences that are going to impact things? I mean, I noticed my Quest was just playing around with hands-free, getting rid of the controllers.
Yes.
So I actually like the controllers because of the haptic response, but I'm just curious, are you guys keeping your eye ahead of any new tech that's going to impact your storytelling and what you're doing?
Yes, I'm with you. I think that the hands are a really neat concept, but I think it's difficult to teach mechanics. Grab doesn't feel the same in VR. So that's why our gadgets in Dr. Crumb are zany, right? We're putting spring-loaded punch gloves in your hand and you just hit the trigger and they fire. So you don't have any example of that in the real world. So you're not going to say, oh, this doesn't feel right, because it's completely new. So that's the direction we'd like to do, is only have interaction mechanics that you can only do in VR. And that's why I like the haptics that you mentioned. I'm excited by, I think the Quest is an amazing headset and will just keep getting better. I hear rumors that other companies are coming out with standalone headsets. And so that's exciting, that there will be a lot more options for people to buy out there. So I'm excited for headsets to get lighter to wear, that cheaper, so they're more accessible, and better battery life, so that people can kind of just put them on and take them off. So I think VR is great where it is right now. I just think it needs to be a little cheaper, a little more comfortable. And then I'm excited about what's happening in the AR space, wearable AR. I don't think it's quite there. I think it's maybe 5 or 8 years away. But as I said, we want to make a way that people connect virtually with a live host. And we love VR for doing that. But if there's an amazing medium where we can create an AR adventure with a live host across distance.
Oh my God, that's cool.
We will do that.
Right, that's really cool. What about you, Kim? Any new tech coming up that you're the most excited about?
I'm just focused on the next version of Quest and other headsets that are lighter, that I can wear for longer periods of time. Getting that price point down even a little bit lower for folks will be good. I'm focused on the headsets.
I forgot to mention that Kim and I have known each other since you were a assistant editor, an apprentice editor,
Yeah, a
uh,
few
on,
lifetimes ago.
yeah, on a movie
Congrats.
called Kazam, where I was actually the assistant to Paul Michael Glaser, Starsky. So I feel like we've all come a long way.
Yeah.
Still working on magic.
Still working on magic. So Ken Adams and Max Planck, I want to thank you so much. Dr. Crumb's School for Disobedient Pets. You have to check it out if you have a headset, and it's under Adventure Lab. Where can everyone find out more about you and sign up to try this out?
They can check us out on Twitter. Our handle's Adventure Lab Rat. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and then the website is adventurelab.fun, and you can book a showtime there.
That's great. I want to thank you guys so much. I'm going to say goodbye to you.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you so much. Bye. And we're going to say goodbye. Okay, everybody. Well, I wanted to thank all of you for joining our first StreamYard broadcast. I want to thank the fine folks at Voice America who are engineering this right now, and it's going out live on podcast on their network. And also my colleagues at Black Shadow for turning me onto this platform, for Mark Johnson for all the fantastic producing help and branding help, and also just all of you for joining us here today. So thanks a lot for joining me on the Tech Cat Show, and we will be back in a couple of weeks with another great show looking at top trends in technology and top trends across the board, things that are impacting us, especially during this stay-at-home time. And also, please be safe out there, spread love and joy, and not violence. My heart goes out to everyone who's been hurt at all at this time. It's such a strange time in our country, but we're all hoping for great peace and love. And so thank you all again for joining, and come back again on the Tech Cat Show. This is Lori H. Schwartz, your Tech Cat, signing out for now. Thanks again, everybody. Bye.
All right, you're clear.
Thank you so much. Max and Kim, you were awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Wait, I'll bring you back.
Tells you what's happening at any moment. You're on the show, you're off the show, you're quiet, you're loud. I love it.
Thank you so much.